So who wants to buy Greenland? Hell, in fact, I'll trade you Greenland for the Confederacy. Why don't we just go for it all? We'll take Japan, Canada, North Korea, China. We'll take all of Europe, Spain, Portugal. Come on, Trump. Where's your cojones? Let's see some cojones here. You say you want Greenland. Well, go for it all, baby. I say go for it all. So welcome back to the channel, Culture Confederacy here. It's Monday night. Happy Monday, everybody. And if you're new to the channel, no fancy graphics, nothing like that. What you see is what you get. So we talk about anything. It's anything goes. I usually use a still shot. But thank you again for watching and subscribing if you've been with me for a while. But I want to share this post by Dr. Alan Harrelson. He's got a channel here on YouTube. So a shout out to his channel. And it's funny what he says here because he says something totally, it's politically incorrect to the nth degree. And then we're going to talk about what James Madison had to say about state sovereignty, sovereignty in general. From his essay from 1835, we'll look at the Constitution, what the Constitution says about immigration. Because the truth is, folks, yes, Congress has the power to make these laws regarding a standard for naturalization, standard law for naturalization. But the states have the right to determine who or who cannot enter or become a resident of their state. And what we have going on in Minneapolis, it's a disaster. This is putting us on the edge of civil war. That's what it's doing. And what Trump's doing here by sending in these troops, National Guard troops, like 3,000, 4,000? Do you really need 3,000 or 4,000 National Guard troops, federal troops or agents in Minneapolis? I don't think so. But by doing that, he's pulling a Lincoln. Because remember, that's exactly what Lincoln did. He sent, 75,000 troops down to the South to quell the rebellion? Well, it wasn't a rebellion, they seceded. But I digress. So let's get to this. Again, this is Dr. Alan Harrelson. He posted this the other day. He says, I had to chuckle this evening when I noticed Greenlanders protesting Trump with signs that read, Yankee, go away. And I took a look at some of these images. Oh, it's funny. I'm surprised they didn't see a Confederate battle flag. Well, he does have a Confederate battle flag here. Actually, it's below his post, and it's actually one of the Confederate battle flags. Remember, there were several versions, or it went through several stages. So I think this is the blood-stained banner. It's got the Confederate symbol, the St. Andrew's Cross in the upper left corner, upper left field. He goes on to say, I've been saying the same thing for years. And so have I. Trump's presidency proves one thing to me above all else. The United States is a sinking ship. Neither of the two major political parties give a damn about the Constitution or American history, and that's true, because the only thing these two parties care about is their party. All they're concerned about is power. They could care less about what's best for the United States. If Trump really cared about what's best for the United States, he would not be going after Greenland. He would not be sending these troops to Minneapolis. Now, I have my own issues with these protesters. If you're going out there and you're harassing these ICE agents and you're preventing them from doing their job of going after legitimate illegal aliens that we need to get out of the country, then I have a problem with that. But you ICE agents out there in Minneapolis who are just pulling people out of their cars and trying to issue traffic citations and try to force their car door open when you're not a police officer. And where's the Minneapolis Police Department? I brought this up before. What is going on in Minneapolis? Thank God I don't live there. But he says here, I taught American history for years at the college level. One thing I noticed each semester, Americans, especially American youth, are not historically conscious. And that's true. They're mostly concerned with the here and the now, or the world they know is the world they were born in. So if you were born in, let's say, 1980 or 1992, that's the world you know. They're not historically conscious, but futuristic. Any attempt to invoke historical authorities is of no avail. As such, I often feel like a lone voice crying in the wilderness. I wish the South had won. Oh, you can't say that. You can't say that. But what if the South didn't necessarily win, but what if they seceded and the North just left them alone? I'm pretty sure slavery at some point would have died off, because at the time you still had the Industrial Revolution, or the Industrial Revolution had happened at the latter part of the 18th century, going into the 19th century. I wish we would once again try to separate from the sinking ship. Which leads me to this essay by James Madison, talking about sovereignty. This is from 1835. So this is a good 25, 26 years before the Civil War. And you can find this at the National Archives site. So I'm going to read you about 3 paragraphs of this because it's quite lengthy and a little wordy. So pardon the language of the time, that's just how they wrote things back in those days. But he talks about this debate they were having then about state sovereignty versus the power of the central government. Isn't it funny? We're having that same discussion, that issue now with what's going on in Minneapolis. In settling the question between these rival claims of power, it is proper to keep in mind that all power in just and free governments is derived from compact, that where the parties to the compact are competent to make it, and where the compact creates a government and arms it not only with the moral power, but the physical means of executing it is immaterial by what name it is called. Its real character is to be decided by the compact itself. So we have a compact, the Constitution. What is the nature of the Constitution? Why was it created? It was created by the states as a contract between the states. And the states created the federal government through convention, giving the federal government, the central authority, pardon me again, let me take a sip of my coffee here, certain powers. And the states, believe it or not, could call a convention and rescind some of those powers, or all those powers. They could start over tomorrow if they wanted to. Let me see where I was at here. And it's to be determined the nature of the contract, the character of the contract, the compact, by the extent of the powers it specifies and the obligations imposed on the parties to it. As a ground of compromise, let then the advocates for states' rights acknowledge this rule of measuring the federal share of sovereign power under the constitutional compact, and let it be conceded, on the other hand, that the states are not deprived by it of that corporate existence and political unity which would, in the event of a dissolution, voluntary or violent, of the Constitution, replace them in the condition of separate communities, that being the condition in which they entered into the compact. So even though these states signed on to this thing called the Constitution, they did not give up their sovereignty, their independence entirely. They gave up only certain powers, allocating other powers, sometimes the same powers, to the federal government. In other words, they're supposed to be treated as equal. You have the balance of power in D.C. between these 3 branches. And to be honest with you, in my humble opinion, I think that there should be... Why are there federal offices from the FBI, from ICE, you name it, why are they in these states? All of these offices, these federal offices, should be located and operating not in Minneapolis, but out of D.C. Period. End of story. If states are supposed to be sovereign and independent, that's what we need to do. Bring everything back to the center, call a constitutional convention, and strip D.C. of all these powers and this bloated bureaucracy. That's the only way you're going to solve this problem and stop this division. And get rid of these political parties. That's the only way you're going to do it. So one last paragraph here. The condition in which they entered into this compact, as I said, a condition of an independent and full sovereignty, as well as the effect of the Declaration of 1776, which dissolved our connection with Great Britain and the that the states individually to the character they are at the formation of the compact. Again, pardon some of the language, it's kind of heavy here. We got some heavy language from the founders, man. It was heavy, man. It was really heavy. So just as we declared secession from Great Britain, the mother country, to retain our sovereignty, these individual states have the right to exercise their state powers, their sovereignty, their independence. So let's go to the Constitution and see what the Constitution has to say about immigration here. So if you go to Article 1, Section 8, but I want to share the preamble with you because it's important to look at the preamble. Everybody knows the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. But if you look at this a little bit closer, it's saying, we the people. Who are these people it's talking about? The people of the states, these governing bodies at the time. Because when the Constitution was created, not all of these colonies had become states yet, or they were in process of becoming states. But it says, we the people of the United States, not United States, but United States. It's important to make that distinction. In order to form a more perfect union, not a nation, not even a confederation, which we were at the time with the Articles of Confederation, not even a republic, but a more perfect union of free and independent or sovereign states. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, etc., etc. So if you go to Article 1, it says, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. But who is granting that power to Congress? It's the people of the states, which they did through convention when they had the Philadelphia Convention to create the Constitution. Which, by the way, a lot of these people going to the Philadelphia Convention, thought they were going to get a new and improved version of the Articles of Confederation, and the Articles of Confederation was actually our first Constitution. I've mentioned that before. So if you look at Article 1, Section 8, it talks about all of these powers that have been granted to Congress. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. It talks about borrowing money on the credit of the United States, regulating commerce, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States, coin money, etc. Talks about establishing post offices and post roads. But in the CSA Constitution, they required the post office to be self-sufficient. It had to raise its own funds to support itself. That's kind of cool. No more next window, please signs. So we have it here that Congress, in Article 1, Section 8, Congress can establish a uniform rule of naturalization. But what does it say about the states? This is in Section 9. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit. Now, this dealt at the time more with slavery, but it could also include immigrants at the time, white indentured servants, you name it, who were not considered citizens. The migration or importation of such persons as any of these states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. Again, this deals more with slavery, but it could also apply to immigrants and indentured servants, or somebody who's in between. I'm sure they had something similar to the green card back then. So the states can decide, according to Article 1, Section 9 here, who they allow or not allow in their state. So if Minnesota wants to bring in all these immigrants and have these sanctuary cities, guess what, Trump? Guess what, Congress? Guess what, DC? That is Minnesota's priority. That's their prerogative because it's here in the Constitution. The migration or importation of such persons that these states think are proper to admit. Let's go to Section 10 where it talks about the powers of the state. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, that is, when they are part of the United States, grant letters of marque. And by the way, there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about secession, nor anything in the Constitution that talks about political parties. Letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver, coin of tender, and payment of debts, etc., etc. Pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law. Now, something to note here about this. If you look at the CSA Constitution, everybody quotes, I believe it's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, talking about how no law shall be passed regarding Negro slavery. That's the wording they used at the time. Well, the truth is, folks, the truth is, that the reason that was put in there is because there's a section of the U.S. Constitution that talks about interfering with the obligation of contracts. And at the time, slavery in the South had evolved by 1860 into a system of contracts. So when they came up with their Constitution, they put that in there to clarify that. And the big beef wasn't necessarily slavery. It's the fact that Lincoln was not allowing them into the Western territories. He promised that they could keep slavery in the South. They just couldn't settle the Western territories. And the South said, you can't do that. The Supreme Court's ruled on that. That's interfering with commerce. Because these contracts just didn't extend to slaves or indentured servants. A lot of these plantation owners were doing business with people out west, buying farm equipment, you name it. So if you're preventing them from traveling into that area to do business with people who've already settled there, that is an infringement on commerce. That's interfering with the obligation of a contract. Read you one last section here. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay in duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter to any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So if Governor Greg Abbott in Texas wanted to put up razor wire, he had every right to do so. Put it up along the Rio Grande to keep these illegal immigrants out, because he has a duty, an obligation as governor of the state of Texas to protect the citizens of Texas. So the Biden administration was in the wrong for preventing him from doing that, or trying to get the Supreme Court to say, you got to take that razor wire down. That's infringing on the state or the sovereignty of the state. Because that's their first priority as governor, is to protect the well-being of their citizens. So I thought I'd share this with you. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can follow me at Instagram, Jason197711. Find me at Substack or go to Culture Confederacy at Culture Confed 1 on X. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe everybody, keep up the culture, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.